Hey folks, and welcome to The Salty Seaman, coming at you with another Tales from the Fleet. Going back chronologically, but kind of not at the same time. That makes sense. Back to the summer of 1997, and kind of giving you where my headspace was at this point. This is kind of, starting from the spring going through the rest of this year, this is kind of my time as Mr. TAD from the division, and a lot of this is avoiding one person. And I've gone on record saying here, I was not the best seaman at this point. I was, coming out in my life pretty much. I was a very shy, awkward kind of kid. And I had friends. I even had the occasional girlfriend, against all odds. But generally, I had a very, I think, low self-esteem, low sense of belonging, and anything, I ever felt like myself. And, at this point, I had kind of gotten comfortable as myself and comfortable as a person, where I didn't have to put on airs to, try to attract women or try to even just hang with friends. I got to the point where I was just myself. And, for the most part, talking to girls, how things happen. But for the most part, I just let myself be myself, and I let that self have confidence. So on a social setting at this point, I'm feeling better than I have in my entire life. And I think I've been kind of touched on that on the last few, where I was going with this. Unfortunately, what really suffers is, my professional life, by being a sailor, which is, not just, it's so hard to separate the two in the situation where you live on the ship and you're on, you're constantly going underway and doing deployments and duty days. But, I was so adamant about this separate life, and, it really did, I suffered so much on the ship for it. Things I could have easily taken care of and done, at least just to keep myself out of trouble. I would get, lazy with, keeping the boots shined or getting a haircut or, showing up in uniform. Stuff I could easily fix and was capable of, and I wasn't always on top of my game. I wasn't a complete shitbag, but I wasn't great either. Definitely not a guy you'd point out most of the time. I had my moments and I had some bad times. And that was just from not caring. I was just like, I had so little, I hit my minimum standards of every qualification I had to do for basically the rest of the time I could be there. If I never made E4, which at that point I wasn't thinking I ever would. I had no faith in that. And, and I had a lot of insecurity on that side of the work. And what it didn't help, of course, is the boss I was under at the time. Why I was TAD so much, mutual agreement, two people who don't like each other. However, as time would go on between me and Miss Senior Chief Dottie Mayhew, someone's complained to her and called her up by name, whatever, probably have already by this point. But, we just didn't get along, and it quickly became something where she was not trying to mentor me or try to make me a better sailor. She just wanted me gone. If it was kicking me out of the division for TAD, which I was much agreeable to, or when I was there just to find any fault with me and kind of ride me. And, there was definitely a feeling of, I was getting smart enough to how people operate to realize what she was doing was, often under a very, I see through disguise of I'm trying to help you and I'm trying to mentor, when in reality she's just kind of faking it, and everything she otherwise does proves, she is looking to bust you on something. And being an admin, where she could get me, it's like if I could keep my shit together, I show up on time, I'm shaved, my haircut's decent, my uniform's decent, I'm making all my watches on time, but she gets down to where she is, nitpicking me on, writing correspondence and whatnot, to the point I'm getting nitpicked on any little infraction that is, beyond the pale, especially in terms of the often chewing outs I would get for things that would, and which I noticed, other people did not get. Say for instance, one of the guys she did like in the office, KB, turn in, a similar piece of correspondence, come back with a lot more red marks, and he gets kind of a, pat on the back. He's like, and a little talking to, he's like, hey, remember this, and this. I turn in something, it's got one, typo over there, and there situation, and, the margin for the serialization's off by a quarter inch. I'm getting told what a fuck up I am, and, possibly the Navy's not for you. I mean, have you looked at ways of getting out? I am not fucking kidding. So, at this point, I'm very young. I'm very junior. I don't quite have my bullshit detector as good as it would become. Still only a couple of years in, but she was one of my first learning projects in terms of spotting those people who are fake and those people who are real. And hers was so glaringly obvious, at least to me. She was not trying to help me. She was not trying to mentor me. Any attempts at that, just kind of, led to, what felt like condensation, and everything else always felt like a drive to get me to pursue something else besides the Navy. And, she finally got it. She looked up my my ASVAB score, and she was surprised to find out I was smart. It was something that I encountered a couple times, and I've talked about it a few times before. And I think that's my early self. I was very I didn't talk a lot around seniors. I'd still that shy, awkward kid, and just the difference in where I was socially back then, and just the rank difference. Yeah, I think I came off kind of shy, and if there were problems with me, it was either chalk up to my intelligence. So that came back to me too. She's like, she would come and yell at me again about very, very. I mean, I'm not saying there weren't stuff where I could have been definitely better on, but what I definitely remember a lot of times was shit. I was getting really, really shit on for minor hiccups that other people didn't. And then she started putting in, like, well, senior ASVAB score is 75. And higher than hers, by the way, because I did look hers up. Thank God I worked in admin. So she took offense to that. It felt like, it was like, okay, well, he's not stupid. And she did her research. And this becomes pretty interesting in our little tit for tat we would have pretty much past her leaving the division anyways. But she's done a little research, and she's found out about ADD, which I had ADHD, and she asked me if I ever been tested for it. Ever been tested for it? However she said ADD, or she said it out, and I don't know, for whatever reason, I just let it out. I was like, yeah, I had it my whole life. I had it as a kid, took it in my last year of high school, didn't disclose it when I joined the Navy. So it's like, boom, hey, you go to medical, you tell that to the corpsman right now. And I don't know what I was feeling at the time, but it was probably the closest I came to looking for an easy way out. And and it wasn't, and it was all about just just how badly I feel like I wasn't getting in with work. I wasn't getting in being the Navy thing, working with her, even though I knew at this point, like, it was a matter of months before she was gone. I knew she wasn't lasting much longer, but it was still just like, just she made my life so painful, and everything felt so like, can I make 2 more years? I don't know. It's like, I just felt like the bottom was going to fall out at some point, and might as well get out while the getting's good. I went to the corpsman, and I laid out everything. And at one point, he kind of stops me, and this is one of the more important moments in my life. I feel my life could have gone a lot of different ways if not for this one person. And he's just like, getting to the point where he's got to start writing down stuff officially. He's just taking notes. He's like, dude, what do you want me to do? Like, if you're looking to get out right now, like, yeah, we can make this happen. You'll float out free and easy. Just say, the recruiter told you not to disclose it. You'll get out on administration under honorable. And then everything starts hitting me as he's saying this. It's like, at the time, I didn't know. Probably at the time I could have kept my GI Bill, because I had it over 2 years in. But or I was about to hit 2 years. Anyway, regardless. But in my mind, that was, if I didn't complete my 4-year commitment, it was done. I was like, okay, well, I lose a GI Bill, and now I go home to my parents. A failure, a washout. Even I could lie to them and say, they found out, quote unquote, about my ADHD. Try to save face, but it was like, I didn't want to live with, even if that was a situation. This is all going through my head in microseconds. It's like, I could never live that lie. I'd have to come forward just to face myself. And I'm thinking, like, no, you know what? No, fuck that. Fuck her. I knew she was, if she just figured out I had ADD, or, she found out because I think there was probably people I had mentioned it to, and maybe she had scrolled it out, and like she set the bait. Regardless, I wasn't going to take it. And I was like, no, I'm finishing out this contract as stated, 4 years. I am taking my GI Bill and my honorable discharge, and I'm going to college. So it comes back to a situation where we have to go back. I go back to the office, and she's sitting there. I think all this is taking place on a duty day, and I'm the only guy on duty, which means, she's afraid I'm going to fuck something up majorly, even though I've been doing this for 2 years. She'd stay like late through like 8, 9 o'clock at night. She was annoying. God, that bitch was annoying. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, it's like I have to come back, and we end up talking about it after hours, and I explained to her exactly what I just said. It's like, that's what I want. And I think I can get through the next 2 years and do that. And she's like, and for the first time, and it was genuine because I'd seen so much false sincerity from her before and since. It was, she's like, you know what, just basically said, I don't like this guy, but it wasn't that personal with her. I think she was petty, but I wasn't like the biggest thorn on her side. She was senior chief. She had other shit to do. She saw how serious I was. Like, hey, and she probably knows, like, this guy could probably squeak out his next 2 years. Hopefully they'll keep him, busy doing minor things, which will lead into a little bit here in a minute. But, yeah, she was very like, you know what, I'm not going to take that from you. It's like, I understand you want to stay in. She's saying this is her high-pitched Kentucky fucking accent, but get annoyed hearing that the entire time. So senior agreed. She's like, she let it drop. And she brought it up a couple more times, just, when we got in, she was bitching me out for whatever the fuck it was. But, but we just avoided contact, and then that ended up helping a lot. I went back to second term in Fox. I did when we got the new captain, we did the DC Tiger team, which I think I talked about a bit. And always a great thing is, like, the same boss and all those, Oswin Rogers, who always wanted to get off just like everybody else. And, I modeled my LPO career after, get the work done and get the fuck out. And he was great. But, he didn't play like myself, he never played the Navy game. And, we both ended up in similar situations, I think, as first classes. So, should tell you something. But it was mostly avoiding her in my second tour of Fox. He's like her golden boy. And there's nothing against KB. He's a good guy. She happened to like him, and, what was he going to do about it? Like, be mad? He got pretty much a lot of favors in the office. I mean, good for him. But yeah, he was still in Seaman, and it was his turn to go up for FSA. And what happened was, yeah, she decided, no, I'm gonna let my boy go and rot down there. And we were like 6 weeks out from the E4 test. So the thing is, like, well, he's going to pick up, she had no worries I was going to pick up, and it was pretty well known. I didn't study for the test. I read the YN3 handbook the night before. That was the fit of my studying. I looked at the questions and guessed best I could. And that was it. And I had no strong feelings coming out of it. I fucking got it. It was always, at the time, it was pretty tight, and I knew I just didn't do well enough. But she's like, well, Bryant was getting pretty close. It's like, he'll probably make it. We're not going to get stuck cranking. So she sent him to take my place in Fox, and I took his place in cranking. Only this time, I had the joy of being in dry storage, which is way better than washing pots and pans, let me tell you. So it was pretty cool, actually, what it ended up being. At the time, I just moved in with my girlfriend out in town. So I had a place to stay off the ship, which I just treasured above everything. That really did, another talk about that, social situations where I was feeling great about my life. That was part of it. And being able to leave that thing every day and sleep somewhere else was really great. Despite me and my girlfriend at the time having one of the smallest apartments in the history of the human race, I think. But, yeah, and, so it was kind of a pain in the ass. I had to get up really early some mornings because we did openings. And, I think I've touched on this story in different points. But putting it in context with Senior Chief, so I was doing, and I worked with an MS3 who was the brother of a chief on board, and the chief was a shit-hot guy, and the MS3 was not. I still have his wife, who was a former supply person on the ship. They ended up marrying. She happens to hear this. I don't know what he's like now, but he was a bit of a lazy MS3, I can tell you that, and I covered for his ass a lot. And the other Filipinos in S2. But regardless, long story short, I'm there, maybe a month, and the results come out. I think I touched on this also story. I found out they made third class. I get 2 phone calls for, I got a message on, first one's my friend Brett calls me and tells me, and I think I am 100% convinced he's playing some fucking joke on me. And it's actually kind of pissing me off. I'm like, why the fuck would he do that? That's so mean. And then it starts sinking in. I was like, maybe I did make it. I'm like, no. And then we look down the phone, and Roth has called me. And he has confirmed, it's like, yeah, I was in, it's like, okay, well, they can't be in cahoots on this. I just can't imagine that. So that's how I found out. And then we went and partied up at Seaside that night. I have a bunch of pictures from that night, and there's some other stories of that night I won't go into, but it was wild. Let's put it that way. But yeah, the good news comes out. That was like the weekend. I think came out on a Friday in the States, came out Saturday for us, Saturday night I think, and Monday it's like. My friend Jay, I think this is when Jay was getting kicked out for coke. Hey, Jay. I've gone over this a little bit too, but yeah, he got popped. Him and other friend Adam did coke on a Monday, and piss test came up for Jay Davis on a Tuesday. But yeah, it's like the results. It's like I remember just a big crowd of people, and for some reason like seniors there. And she's already out of the division. Like, she is back in comm, and our new senior chief, our chief at the time, became a senior chief and became one of my best mentors of all time, Jan Medley. We're already in the office, but I was still down there doing crank work, and there's, that became a whole thing, me getting out of that, but, getting ahead of myself. She goes by, and Jay is like, being his normal obnoxious self, is like, "Hey, senior chief, look, it's Seaman Owens. He made third. Aren't you going to congratulate him?" In his big old Texas belligerent accent. And oh my God, it was so. She cut a promo on me. She did not congratulate me. She did not take it. She says like he needs to something about straighten himself up and make sure he's got his basically my crap together. He's going to lose it real quick. Oh my God, she fucking buried me in a promo right in front of I know there was people there too, but I fucking I did not care. It was the funniest thing. It was such a sore loser fucking moment in her life where she realized, holy shit, they made this guy E4, and I was nice to him once and allowed him, and like didn't kick him out when I could have, and it was just like it was so fucking great. I loved it. So yeah, but the end of the time was like I don't think I've quite touched on this. Is like trying to get out of cranking. Speaking of, this is definitely when Jay was getting kicked out because they put him in cranking and S2 washing dishes. It was like, new Y and 3 is going to leave soon. It's like, okay, we're just keeping you for a couple days because E4 is like back then it was E3 and below to crank. Once you made E4, you're supposed to immediately go. I said I'll stick around and cover because at the time I was still in the mentality of stay away from the office as long as possible, even though I didn't know my savior would be in there at this point. So like I don't immediately fight it. I'm like, sure, I'll stay down here till. Whoever the body from admin was supposed to come down and relieve me. But instead of being in this position, they gave it to Jay. And Jay came over like, wasn't too long after I put my crow on. And he was like, basically learned the job of, how dry storage works and how to do breakouts, which is not very hard. And suddenly it's like, well, he already knows the job. So it's like, it's going to be 3 more days before you get a replacement from admin. I forget who it was. But you need to go to the, don't worry, you'll be in charge. You're E4. I respect that. It was this MS2, what was it, Fato? Fan. Him just a little Filipino, or not, little Vietnamese guy, I should say. And he was in charge. It was like Master Arms at the time. And I said, no, I'm not. It's like I'm in E4. Like I said back then, that's not how the ship worked. It was like, no. I was like, no, I'm not gonna go fucking wash, dishes in the scullery. And I walked out of the smoke deck, arguing with him about that. And like, hey, you need to leave dry storage and come up here. And I walked in the Command Master Chief's office and told him what's going on. And he just said, he just told me straight, report back to the admin office. I'll talk to MS2 and S2 and S2 in general. And later, Fawn would come out and yell at me about it, taking our beef all the way. And I'm like, oh, that's the only way that beef was going to go, man, because I'm not going to win with you. And it's bullshit. And, I was only hanging on because I had a fucking cush spot. Now that I'm retelling, I think I have told this before in my crank ones, but again, tying all back into that. But then I would get released pretty much right then and there, and then I would go work in the office, do my first full deployment. E4, free to roam the lands all night, and 4 months plus to enjoy the sights and sounds of the Asian Pacific in Australia. So I'll leave it right there, and we'll get into there's a couple stories I had to go back and get to, including me and Roth in I can't remember the name of the place. It was Japanese Kagodashi, something like that, in a little island in Japan. And a few other stories I kind of skipped over getting to that point, and then do 2 or 3 of those, and then we'll move on to Southern Swing '98. 21 years old, E4, full liberty. It was a good time. So we're both down in the dry storage office, and he calls to the quarterdeck and says, money changers will be available in the on the mess decks. And this is Guam, so it's American money, but the watch does not paying attention or doesn't realize what's going on. Whatever makes the announcement, and Higgly Piggly breaks loose, and it was pretty funny. And I'm just sitting there down there watching. Jay just busting up laughing about this. I'm crying. MS3 I think comes down at some point. We tell him it was Jay, and of course he's literally getting kicked out of the Navy at this point. Doesn't give a fuck. Jay ended up on going with us partially on a cruise while they waited to put him to mast, and then I had been step him out. Him and he got chaperoned by our good friend Dwayne Honeycutt, PN3 at the time. He left PN3 regardless, and they had a one night stay over in Sydney, which apparently was a lot of fun. So love you, Jay. I just thought I'd add that in. Anyways, I'll catch you freaks then. Peace.